The twin suns of Krill 9 hung low over the horizon, bleeding orange and gold across the colony's hydrodomes. Dust swirled in the artificial wind, carrying the faint metallic scent of life support filters and scorched earth. The settlement was fragile, a scattering of domes and supply outposts, strung across cratered plains. And tonight, it felt smaller than ever. Captain Elara Voss stood alone on the observation deck, hands gripping the railing as though it could keep the planet and her people safe. Through the hazy sky, a dark mass approached, a fleet of alien ships, massive, silent, and inexorable, blotting out the suns in streaked clouds of heat distortion. Every sensor in the colony screamed warnings. Each ping and blip a heartbeat of dread. They're coming faster than predicted, Elara thought, teeth clenched. She felt that familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach, the same one that had haunted her since the last frontier outpost she commanded fell. Memories pressed like ghosts. The fire, the screams, the helplessness. Not again. Not here. The comms tower blared, cutting through the hum of generators. Reinforcements requested. Repeat. Reinforcements requested. Elara keyed her communicator. This is Voss. Colony Krill 9 requesting immediate reinforcements. All available units. Respond. Her voice was steady, professional, but inside, her chest hammered, her soldiers green, nervous, barely out of training muttered prayers, and adjusted their helmets. They expected discipline, protocol, a regimented human force to arrive in response. But the transports that descended through the orange haze delivered something else entirely. The doors hissed open. A figure stepped forward, silhouetted against the twin suns. One, then two, then a squad, humans. Yes, but unlike any Elara had ever seen. Their armor was dented, scarred with acid burns, patched crudely with plates taken from battles unknown to the colony. Their gait was not ceremonial, not precise, it was predatory. Eyes scanning, reflexes taut, movements economical yet fluid. Like a predator stalking the untrained. Leading them was Sergeant Core. Tall, broad, scarred. Each mark a story etched in flesh and memory. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply assessed the colony, as though weighing it for utility and threat simultaneously. Every subtle twitch of his muscles radiated efficiency, calm, and lethal intent. Elara's stomach twisted. These aren't reinforcements. They're something else entirely. The first skirmish came within hours. Alien skimmers descended through the clouds, plasma cutting arcs through the twilight. Elara barked orders, but hesitation gripped her soldiers. Every shot fired seemed to fall short. Every movement calculated and delayed by fear and training that didn't prepare them for this. Core Squad moved differently. They flowed through the battlefield with terrifying precision. A death worlder vaulted over collapsed domes, bullets skipping off the concrete as if they were a dance partner. Another slashed a plasma-wounded alien, with a blade so fast it seemed invisible, before ducking behind a fractured wall. The terrain itself seemed to obey them. Every ridge, crater, and mound transformed into advantage. Elara shouted, "Hold your positions." Core's voice cut across the noise, calm, controlled, but carrying authority. Positions don't save lives. Move, adapt, kill if you must. The soldiers hesitated. Civilians crouched behind shattered walls, eyes wide as they witnessed what survival could demand. One young engineer, barely 16, whispered, Are they going to save us, or kill us?" The question lingered, unspoken yet loud in the silence of fear. Elara's internal monologue was a tangle of admiration and terror. They're saving us, but at what cost? I feel their efficiency, slicing through morality itself. Can humanity survive like this, and still remain human? Hours bled into chaos. The alien skirmish escalated. Plasma fire seared the evening sky. Dust and debris kicked up in the orange haze. Core Squad executed maneuvers that blurred the lines between heroism and monstrosity. In one breathtaking moment, he flung himself in front of a collapsing wall to shield a child, his scarred hand cutting across jagged concrete. In the next instant, he dispatched a plasma-wounded alien behind them without hesitation. Elara's soldiers followed, half in awe, half in fear. She realized that conventional tactics would not suffice here. The Death Worlder's methods were terrifying but undeniably effective. If we survive this, it won't be because we did everything right. It'll be because someone else ignored every rule we believed in. Tension reached a fever pitch when an alien ambush cornered them on the cratered outskirts. Plasma arcs sizzled overhead, craters spitting molten rock as Core Squad moved with choreographed precision. Elara ducked behind rubble, calculations running in her head. One wrong move. The colony, her people, would be annihilated. She watched as Core's cold efficiency shattered her preconceived notions. Every shot was a choice. Every maneuver a moral calculation she couldn't fully comprehend. Civilians screamed. Soldiers froze and, yet, the Deathworlder's presence created order in chaos. This is survival distilled, she thought, stomach knotted. But are we still the ones making the choice? The climax came as the alien fleet launched a coordinated assault on the colony's high. Explosions lit the sky like fireworks of destruction, and smoke choked the streets. Civilians fled, some screaming, others paralyzed by shock. Ilara faced the ultimate moral decision. Force her soldiers to adopt the Deathworlder's ruthless methods, or retreat and risk annihilation. Kor's voice, calm and measured, cut through the panic. I'll keep them alive. But survival doesn't always mean being kind. In the ensuing battle, Deathworlder tactics turned the tide. Hydrodomes cheated on collapse as plasma lit the skies crimson. The Deathworlder's brutal precision saved lives, yet the moral cost was written in blood and scorched metal. Ilara's soldiers, inspired and horrified, moved beyond their training, mirroring methods that felt unnatural and frightening but undeniably effective. The aftermath was a tableau of survival. Battered civilians, smoking ruins, Deathworlders standing silent among the wreckage. Ilara's heart was heavy, a mix of relief, horror, and awe. We survived, she whispered. But what have we become? Rain hissed against the warped metal of the supply convoy, turning the Deathworld's jagged terrain into a slick, treacherous hellscape. Lightning tore across the sky, revealing the looming shadows of alien predators adapted perfectly to the planet's gravity storms and acid rain oceans. Lieutenant Mara Chen gripped the console of her transport, teeth clenched, eyes flicking across every sensor. Keep it together, Mara. You've got to keep it together, she whispered to herself, trying to steady a trembling hand. The convoy was already behind schedule, and now the skies screamed, with warnings alien interceptors were closing fast. Her squad, though well-trained, was not prepared for the brutality of a Deathworld. One misstep in the mud, one wrong maneuver, and the acidic puddles would eat through armor like paper. Every soldier's breath came in sharp bursts, hearts hammering in unison with the storm. The first attack hit with precision. Alien skimmers struck from the clouds, slashing through transport armor and sending crates tumbling into the acidic mud below. Explosions lit the darkened sky, flashes reflecting in Mara's visor. Soldiers screamed, scrambled, and fired wildly. She ducked as a plasma bolt shredded the wall beside her. We're not going to make it, she thought, panic clawing at her mind. The command protocols, the drills, they all failed in this environment. Survival demanded instinct, improvisation, brutality, and then they arrived. A dropship tore through the storm, kicking up mud and debris as it landed with a bone-rattling crash. Its ramp lowered, and a squad of Deathworlders stepped out. Humans, yes, but utterly unlike any Mara had trained with. Their armor was patchwork, scarred, dented by battles that had left even hardened soldiers pale. Their eyes reflected the storm cold, calculating and predatory dot. Leading them was veteran Auric, tall, broad, and covered in scars. His presence radiated an unnerving calm. Every movement was precise. Every glance assessed threat, opportunity, and survival probability in a heartbeat. Mara's squad froze for a moment, unsure whether to feel relief or terror. Auric's voice cut through the storm, low and controlled. Move, don't think. Survive. The Deathworlders wasted no time. Using debris, mud, and the storm itself, they created ambushes that turned the alien skimmers' own tactics against them. Plasma bolts were deflected, creatures misdirected, traps sprung each movement, a lesson in brutal efficiency. Mara watched, part in awe, part in disbelief. This isn't conventional strategy, this is survival rewritten. The convoy pressed forward, but the storm's fury and alien precision made every mile a death trap. Mara's mind raced. Every choice mattered. Every hesitation could cost lives. Hours into the ordeal, Mara discovered a horrifying truth. Aliens weren't just attacking, they were using human technology against them. Sensors, targeting arrays, even weapons systems were compromised. Someone or something was betraying them from within. The realization hit like a hammer. This battle was not just about survival, it was about betrayal, strategy, and moral limits. Auric pulled Mara aside during a brief lull, rain dripping off his helmet. Sometimes you have to make the choice that kills part of you to save the rest. What do you mean? Mara asked, voice trembling. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he gestured toward a downed transport. Civilians trapped inside while alien predators closed in. Without hesitation, he grabbed a plasma cutter and slashed open the hatch. cutting a child free while dispatching an alien with a motion so quick it was almost elegant. Mara hesitated, frozen by indecision. Orders, protocol, morality, they all screamed for restraint, but every second counted. Finally, she acted, pulling civilians free while the Deathworlders covered her, their movements brutal and precise. In that moment, she realized, survival here demanded a calculus she had never imagined. The convoy continued, battered and diminished, through the canyoned terrain. Aliens pursued relentlessly, using the twisted landscape and gravity storms as weapons. Mara learned quickly that traditional formations were useless. Auric and his squad improvised, using falling rocks, mudslides, and even alien predators to their advantage. A climactic trap awaited them in a narrow canyon. Alien forces had the high ground, plasma traps pre-armed, every escape route cut. Mara and Auric surveyed the situation, adrenaline pumping. Civilians were panicked, soldiers exhausted. Every second was a gamble. We might not make it out alive, Mara thought, a bitter knot forming in her stomach. But we have to survive. Auric made the decision. One of their own would have to stay behind to cover the group's retreat. Mara's instincts rebelled. Sacrifice, strategy, survival. It was a brutal combination that tested loyalty and morality to their limits. A soldier volunteered, nodding at Mara with grim resolve. The Deathworlders coordinated the extraction with chilling efficiency, luring the aliens into a crossfire of plasma, collapsing rocks, and improvised explosives. Mara led the civilians through the chaos, heart-hammering adrenaline sharp enough to slice through fear itself. Finally, the convoy reached the fortified human settlement, battered, broken, but alive. Mara's uniform was torn, mud and acid crusted on her armor. Eyes wide and haunted, she looked at Auric, expecting approval or derision. Instead, he simply nodded, unreadable as ever. The emotional fallout was immediate. Soldiers cried, civilians clutched one another, and Mara finally allowed herself to collapse against a reinforced wall. She had survived, but the cost was written on every burned, mud-caked face around her. Some would carry the trauma forever. Some had seen the lines of morality blur and disappear. They weren't soldiers, they were survivors, Mara thought, voice barely audible over the storm. And survival comes at a price. In the quiet aftermath, Mara reflected on what she had learned from the Deathworlders. Efficiency can be terrifying, yet necessary. Brutality is not evil if it saves lives. Survival demands choices that no drill or protocol can prepare you for. Sareth Prime groaned under the weight of its own industry. Smoke poured from towering mining spires, mingling with clouds of acidic rain, painting the sky in hues of orange and iron. Gravity fluctuated unpredictably, pulling men and machines in uneven waves that made even walking hazardous. The colony's alarm system screamed an unrelenting cacophony of sirens, warning lights, and mechanical shrieks. Explosions shook the tunnels, sending plumes of molten rock into the sky. Colonel Darius Kane stood on a catwalk high above the chaos, gripping the railing as if it could anchor his sanity. His uniform was dust-stained, ripped at the shoulder, and his boots smeared with mud and oil. Beneath his disciplined exterior, fear gnawed like a parasite. Civilians and Minor-Stern militia ran below, trying to obey commands in terrain that defied order. If we lose control here, everything dies, Kane thought. Heart hammering, he clenched his jaw. We have to hold them off. We have to protect them. Then, a distant roar echoed through the tunnels. Reinforcements had arrived. Humans, yes, but molded by the unforgiving death worlds they'd called home. They were Deathworlders, and they moved with a fluidity that seemed inhuman. Skin scarred by acid rainfall, eyes adapted to infrared, muscles taut with constant tension. Their presence alone reshaped the battlefield. Leading them was Sergeant Yarrick, a hulking figure with scars that traced across his chest and arms like roadmaps of survival. He didn't shout orders. He didn't hesitate. He simply moved, and the world around him bent to his efficiency. The first encounter was immediate. Alien raiders, sleek and metallic, surged through the mining tunnels. Plasma fire bouncing off molten rock and steel goods. Kane's militia hesitated, firing sporadically, trapped by fear and hesitation. We can't hold them like this, Kane thought, panic flickering. He barked orders, but his voice was drowned in the chaos. Yarick's squad moved like shadows in the smoke. They scaled collapsing girders, firing from impossible angles. Plasma bolts were deflected, aliens flanked. Traps sprung all with a precision that made Kane's jaw ache from both awe and fear. Efficiency, and no mercy, Kane realized, stomach tightening. The Death Worlders' methods were effective but horrifying. Every alien they killed left Kane questioning his own moral limits. Civilians crouched in the shadows, unsure whether to pray or scream. Kane tried to assert conventional military tactics, but the Death Worlders ignored them. They moved independently, instinctually reading the battlefield. One Death Worlder hurled an improvised explosive from the upper catwalk, collapsing a tunnel and crushing a swarm of alien attackers. Another swept through the lower passages, blades flashing, eyes scanning infrared outlines. The moral tension intensified when a raid went catastrophically wrong. A group of civilians became trapped in a corridor as toxic fumes leaked from damaged ventilation shafts. Kane froze, weighing risk versus protocol. He knew any reckless action could doom both his soldiers and civilians. Yarrick, however, stepped forward without hesitation. "We don't wait, we act," he said, voice like gravel. Within moments, he coordinated a brutal rescue. Death Worlders slashed, shot, and pulled civilians to safety, leaving alien corpses strewn across the tunnel. Kane witnessed the consequences, both the lives saved and the horrifying ruthlessness required. Is this the only way? He wondered, mind racing. The situation became more complex when Kane discovered a hidden vendetta. One of the Death Worlders, a wiry figure named Thane, targeted a specific alien faction with uncanny precision. It became clear he had personal motives, raising questions about loyalty, mission objectives, and the dangers of uncontrolled vengeance. Kane's command structure felt irrelevant in the face of such individuals, and a moral dilemma took hold. Trust the Death Worlders, judgment, or risk mutiny by insisting on traditional orders. Amidst collapsing tunnels and molten rivers, Kane watched Thane maneuver through alien ranks, each kill calculated but tinged with personal rage. Civilians survived because of it. Yet Kane felt the weight of what had been sacrificed. A climactic raid struck near the primary ore processing hub. Aliens flooded from every angle, using the terrain's deadly verticality to their advantage. Gravity shifts made footing unpredictable. Kane's militia faltered. Plasma fire cut arcs through molten rock. Explosions illuminated the chaos, and screams mingled with the hiss of acid rain. Yarrick's squad reacted instinctively. One Death Worlder leapt from a collapsing gantry, landing in the midst of alien attackers, firing with brutal precision. Another detonated improvised charges, creating deadly barriers of molten rock. Kane's eyes widened as he realized the efficiency of their brutality. Civilians and militia were saved, but at great cost. Amid the chaos, Kane had to make a choice. A civilian child was trapped under a collapsed support beam, while alien plasma fire closed in. His instincts screamed to hesitate, to calculate, to plan, yet the Death Worlders acted. One of them, eyes blazing with cold calculation, lifted the beam with sheer strength, firing on aliens with one hand, saving the child in the other. Kane's internal monologue wrestled with what he had witnessed. They are monsters and saviors. Efficiency demands brutality. Morality is optional, but they save lives. Is that enough? The battle culminated in a tense, high-stakes ambush. Aliens had learned to anticipate human tactics, forcing Kane and his combined force to improvise. Death Worlders orchestrated terrain manipulation. Molten rivers redirected. Gantries collapsed on enemy formations, and plasma traps used to channel attackers into kill zones. Kane followed their lead, instinctively adopting their ruthless efficiency. Every movement was a moral compromise. Every life saved came at the cost of shattered ethical boundaries. Civilians emerged, battered, screaming, or silent, faces etched with awe and terror. Soldiers who survived looked at Kane differently, a respect, tinged with fear. As the smoke cleared and molten rock cooled, Kane surveyed the aftermath. Seraph Prime was scarred, mining infrastructure ruined, but the colony survived. The Death Worlders stood silent amidst the wreckage, their armor scorched, their faces impassive. Kane's own soldiers approached, hesitant yet alive. He realized the moral truth. Survival on a death world demanded adaptation beyond morality, and anyone unwilling to bend risked death, not just of themselves, but of those they swore to protect. Kane's discipline and humanity had endured, but they were forever altered, tempered in the fires of brutality and efficiency. They came for soldiers, and found monsters in human skin, Kane thought, heavy with understanding. But they worked. The moon's surface stretched endlessly. Jagged cliffs bathed in the cold glow of distant stars. Ice crunched underfoot, sharp and unforgiving, while a thin mist clung to the jagged terrain. The research station perched on the edge of a crevasse, metal walls groaning against wind and radiation, windows frosted over with a thin layer of ice. Dr. Lin Aoki moved cautiously through the hallways, her breath visible in the frigid air. She adjusted her thermal suit and scanned the monitors. Empty corridors, a faint signal of movement, but nothing concrete. The whispers had returned. Not voices exactly, more like alien murmurs. Vibrations that crawled along the walls and under the skin. It's just my mind, she told herself. It has to be, but deep down, she feared it was more. Her skeleton crew of 3 slept fitfully in their quarters, unaware of what she had sensed for hours. Lynn's empathy clashed painfully with the pragmatism required for survival. She had always believed in understanding alien life, in observing, studying, not killing, but the universe had a different curriculum here. The communications console buzzed a faint, fragmented distress signal. Lynn's stomach twisted. It was a call for reinforcements. Standard protocol would dictate waiting, securing the station, keeping the crew safe, but instinct screamed otherwise. Within hours, a dropship arrived, its hull battered, engines screaming in protest against the thin lunar atmosphere. Out stepped the Deathworlders, humans who had endured planets where gravity shifted violently. Acid rain fell daily, and predators evolved to the point of hunting men. Their presence alone radiated lethal intent. Leading them was Captain Varric, silent, unreadable, every movement deliberate. His armor was scarred, his face lined with experience and cruelty, tempered by necessity. He didn't speak immediately. He simply assessed. Crew, station, terrain, alien threat, mentally calculating. Always one step ahead. Lynn's breath hitched. They're efficient. Terrifyingly so. Can I trust them? The first encounter was swift and brutal. Alien predators, bioluminescent and slithering, emerged from the ice. Plasma-like tendrils lashed out, freezing sensors and corrupting data streams. The research crew panicked. Lynn's hand trembled as she reached for a defensive panel. Varric's squad moved like shadows. One Deathworlder scaled the walls, cutting off attackers with improvised explosives. Another used alien biomass against itself, turning predators into traps for the others. Every action was precise, devastating, and disturbingly calm. This isn't combat. It's predation, Lynn thought, stomach knotting. And we're the prey. Moral tension escalated quickly. Lynn's fascination with alien life conflicted directly with Varric's tactical imperative. Eradicate threats efficiently. Where Lynn saw curiosity, Varric saw danger. Where Lynn hesitated to harm the alien specimens, the Deathworlders acted without remorse. A patrol of alien shadows cornered a crew member near the research lab. Lynn froze, torn between empathy and fear. Varric's voice cut through the darkness, calm yet commanding. Move. Hesitation kills. The crew member survived because of the Deathworlders' brutal intervention. Lynn realized that the cost of knowledge here was measured in blood, and survival often required suppressing moral instincts she had always prized. The plot thickened when Lynn discovered that one Lorian shared an uncanny connection with the alien life. His presence allowed the predators to sense human movements, yet he manipulated them with deadly precision. Lynn confronted him, torn between horror and necessity. You can communicate with them, she asked, voice quivering. Lorian's response was simple, chilling. They respond to weakness. I exploit it. Survival requires honesty. Brutal honesty. Lynn's mind raced. The whispers in the corridors seemed louder now, almost sentient, weaving around her thoughts. The station became a labyrinth of psychological terror. She had to negotiate with humans who were simultaneously saviors and monsters, and with alien life that defied comprehension. The first major ambush tested everyone. Alien shadows attacked from multiple vectors, the station's corridors narrowing to trap humans in confined spaces. Lynn watched Varric coordinate his squad. One flanked from above, another drew predators into dead ends, while Varric himself led the counterstrike, calm and precise. Lynn's hand shook as she interfaced with the station's control system, opening airlocks to vent aliens into vacuum or collapse structural supports to eliminate threats. Every decision carried a moral weight. Redirecting a predator could save a human life, but the alien would die or worse, adapt. This isn't research. This isn't science. This is survival at a cost I'm not sure I can bear, she thought, heart racing. The Deathworlders' efficiency saved lives, but at the cost of Lynn's idealism. She began to see the brutal calculus. Hesitation meant death. Every alien neutralized was both a relief and a moral wound. Every Deathworlder action forced her to reconcile empathy with efficiency. A twist arrived when Lynn discovered that Lorian had purposefully allowed certain alien predators to stalk the crew, using them as live simulations to teach lethal tactics. Lynn confronted him. You're experimenting on them, she hissed. He shrugged, calm. detached. I'm ensuring survival. No one else will survive without lessons learned in real time. The crescendo approached as an alien horde attacked the station's central hub. Corridors shuddered, windows cracked under the stress, and bioluminescent predators slithered across metallic floors. Lynn and her crew had to cooperate with Varric's squad or die. She issued orders she never thought she would, guided by pragmatism, fear, and the knowledge that hesitation equaled extinction. Varric moved like a ghost. Every Deathworlder action seemed choreographed with a horde, cutting off predators, disorienting the swarm, and clearing paths for humans. Lynn fought alongside them, improvising lethal measures she had never imagined using, watching her scientific detachment dissolve into survivalist instinct. A pivotal moment came when Lynn had to sacrifice research data to save a trapped scientist. Varric gave no instructions, he simply executed, moving the obstacle from her path. The moral choice was hers alone, and she acted, data destroyed. Life saved. The final confrontation was in the station's observation deck. Aliens surged from venting systems, shadows moving against starlight. Varric's Deathworlders were everywhere, lethal and precise. Lynn coordinated defenses, firing modified containment tools, closing airlocks to channel predators, improvising with limited resources. In a slow-motion sequence, Lynn witnessed Varric pull a crew member from a lethal tendril, then turn and fire with precision, dispatching multiple predators in a single motion. The choreography of survival and death was horrifying, cinematic, and odd. Inspiring. Finally, as the last alien was neutralized, the station lay battered, but intact. Lynn surveyed her team, the Deathworlder standing silent and watchful. The crew was alive but forever changed. The moral cost of survival weighed on every face, including hers. When the shadows whispered, Lynn thought, humanity learned that survival isn't always humane. The communication outpost floated on the edge of enemy-controlled space, a lonely sentinel in the darkness. Metallic panels groaned under the weight of constant solar radiation, and blinking lights along the corridors reflected off frost-crusted glass. Sergeant Erinvale sat at the main console, eyes scanning alien frequencies, every muscle taut with anticipation. Another quiet night. Too quiet, he muttered, fingers drumming nervously on the control panel. His headset crackled a weak, distorted SOS signal, cutting through static like a whisper from a ghost. He froze. The coordinates blinked on the screen. A small human settlement, deep in enemy territory, isolated, vulnerable, desperate. This is bad, Erin thought. If we don't respond, they're gone before anyone even knows they existed. The decision was made. Standard protocol demanded caution. But Erin had no choice. He sent a distress relay, calling for reinforcements. Moments later, a dropship roared across the darkened void, kicking up plumes of cosmic dust as it docked. Out stepped the Deathworlders. Humans, yes, but evolved to survive hellish planets. Hardened physically and psychologically, beyond normal comprehension. Commander Syra led them, a figure both inspiring and terrifying. Her armor was dented, scarred, yet somehow pristine. Each mark a testament to battles that would break ordinary soldiers. Her gaze swept the outpost, analyzing every angle, every weak point, every threat. Erin watched them with a mixture of awe and fear. They aren't soldiers. They're predators in human skin. The first encounter was immediate. Alien skimmers, sleek, deadly, and armed with bio-adapted weaponry attacked from orbit, tearing through the outpost's defenses. Explosions shook the metallic corridors, debris raining down, fire and smoke filling every space. Syra moved like a shadow, directing her team with minimal words, each Deathworlder moving as if the chaos had been orchestrated for them. Plasma bolts cut through the darkness, reflecting off the twisted steel, illuminating the predatory precision of the newcomers. Erin's squad, trained but inexperienced, hesitated. We follow orders. We hold positions. But this is different. Syra's voice cut through. Move. Don't think. Survive. The outpost's corridors became a deadly ballet. Deathworlders turned the environment into a weapon. Collapsing bulkheads. Automated turrets repurposed. Corridors funneled enemies into kill zones. Aliens were dispatched efficiently, sometimes brutally, sometimes unpredictably, but always with purpose. Erin witnessed firsthand the moral ambiguity of their methods. A civilian corridor was rigged with an improvised trap that redirected an alien strike, killing a few predators, but also nearly taking a maintenance drone and critical supplies. They make decisions I can't justify, but it works, Erin thought, stomach twisting. Are they saving lives, or reshaping humanity? As the battle intensified, miscommunications began to surface. The outpost's AI, corrupted by alien interference, misdirected reinforcements, doors locked unexpectedly, sections of the station lost power, and panic rippled through Erin's team. Syra, unflinching, adapted instantly. She split her squad, sending Deathworlders to secure critical systems while leaving Erin to manage civilian evac. "I have no right, no skill, but I must act," he muttered, gripping the railing as he led frightened civilians through smoke-filled corridors. The aliens, sensing the human disarray, became more aggressive. They used the station's own layout against the defenders, ambushing from ventilation shafts, dropping from maintenance conduits, and cutting off escape routes with bioplasma. Every moment was a test of reflex, wit, and nerve. Syra's team, however, thrived in the chaos. One Deathworlder leaped from a corridor ceiling, taking out 3 aliens with surgical precision. Another sacrificed heavy equipment to create a molten barrier, stopping an entire horde from advancing. Their actions were brutal, morally ambiguous, but effective. Erin faced his first ethical dilemma. A young technician was trapped under a collapsed ceiling panel, surrounded by alien attackers. Protocol dictated restraint, waiting for the Deathworlders, but Erin couldn't. He acted, pulling improvised charges from storage. He detonated a controlled blast, killing some aliens and destroying critical equipment. The technician survived, but at what cost? Syra appeared beside him, silent. Her eyes assessed the aftermath. No reprimand, no praise, just understanding. The calculus of survival was absolute. A twist emerged when Erin realized that the aliens were not merely attacking, they were manipulating human technology, using it to anticipate movements and sabotage defenses. The battle was no longer just about brute force, it was about intelligence, strategy, and deception. Syra's team adapted instantly. They hacked the station's compromised AI, turning alien tactics against them. Corridors became traps, ventilation systems rerouted, and alien attacks funneled into kill zones. Erin followed their lead, learning the balance between improvisation and survival. A climactic moment struck when a breach in the station's central hub threatened to allow aliens to overwhelm the civilians. Erin had to choose: trust Syra and her ruthless methods, or try to adhere to conventional protocols. Hesitation would be fatal. He chose to trust. The Deathworlders orchestrated a counteroffensive. One lured aliens into a corridor with strategically timed plasma bursts. Another used explosives to collapse the ceiling and block the horde. And Syra herself dispatched the alien commander with a precision shot that sent shockwaves through the remaining forces. The station's corridors fell silent as the last alien was neutralized. Civilians clutched one another, eyes wide with fear and relief. Erin looked at Syra, expecting some acknowledgement, some reassurance. Instead, she nodded slightly, imperceptibly silent approval in a world where words were unnecessary. The aftermath was sobering. Supplies were damaged, systems compromised, and the human cost was staggering. Erin's team had survived, but the moral and psychological toll was evident on every face. He realized survival in the Deathworld paradigm required embracing a new, harsh morality, one that valued efficiency and life over sentiment and caution. The volcanic plains of Gorath stretched endlessly, a molten nightmare under a sky thick with ash. Rivers of lava cut across jagged cliffs, spitting fire and smoke, while sulphurous winds stung lungs and corroded equipment. Captain Rhea Morven trudged forward, her boots scorched at the edges, suit stained with ash and sweat. She squinted against the blood-red sky. Every step a battle against both terrain and terror. "We shouldn't have been here," she thought, teeth clenched. "This planet doesn't forgive mistakes." Her colony was trapped on these highlands, isolated by eruptions, and alien predators evolved to hunt in extreme heat and molten terrain. Human technology seemed laughably fragile. Fragile against both the environment and the cunning of extraterrestrial hunters. Every day without reinforcements increased the risk of total annihilation. The distress beacon had been sent days ago, yet only now did a shadow appear against the horizon. A Deathworlder dropship, kicking up volcanic ash as it descended. Outstepped humans like no others, hardened, scarred, and adapted to worlds that would kill ordinary men. Their leader, Talon, was an imposing figure. Scars and tattoos marked his body, eyes cold and calculating. Yet every movement radiated confidence and lethal precision. "They aren't soldiers. They're crucible-born," Rhea thought, awe mingling with dread. The first encounter was immediate. Alien predators scaled, molten-shelled, heat-adapted rushed from volcanic fissures. tongues of flame licking the edges of the colony's defenses. Panic swept through the colonists. Machines buckled under the heat, communications failed intermittently, and the ground itself seemed intent on swallowing anyone who misstepped. Talon didn't hesitate. His Deathworlders moved with fluid brutality. One leaped across a lava crevasse, firing a pulse rifle, while simultaneously hurling a chemical explosive into a predator's path. Another dismantled a malfunctioning turret, repurposing it to channel alien attackers into molten traps. Every action was lethal, precise, and horrifying in its efficiency. Rhea watched, heart hammering. Can humanity survive this and retain its soul? The Deathworlders' tactics were shocking to the colonists. Where humans hesitated, they acted. Where humans sought moral clarity, they embraced pragmatism. Rhea herself faced her first test. A bridge of volcanic rock collapsed under pressure, leaving a group of children stranded above molten rivers. Rescue attempts were nearly suicidal, yet Talon calmly analyzed options. Sacrifice the equipment to save lives, or leave them, he muttered, almost to himself. Then, without waiting for consent, he coordinated a daring extraction. Rhea and her team followed, improvising safety lines, repurposing heat-resistant armor, and hauling children across the collapsing terrain. The tension didn't relent. Lava flows shifted unpredictably, ash storms blocked visibility, and alien predators adapted to the humans' movements. Every step, every breath, every decision was a gamble. Rhea's inner monologue reflected a growing respect and fear for the Deathworlders' approach. They understand the rules of this world, and we don't. We're lucky they're on our side. Moral dilemmas multiplied. Talon forced decisions that tore at the colonists' ethical fabric. Leave wounded behind to save the many. Destroy fragile technology to secure survival. And sometimes, take lives preemptively to prevent larger massacres. Each choice weighed heavily on Rhea. One young colonist, a boy barely 12, showed unexpected bravery. He navigated molten rock to warn a group of trapped civilians. Talon observed silently, then allowed the boy's actions, subtly acknowledging that courage could be found even among the untested. This moment challenged the Deathworlders' assumptions about weakness and potential, underscoring the theme of adaptation, not just survival, but evolution under extreme pressure. The central conflict escalated during an alien siege at the colony's central hub. Lava vents erupted unpredictably, tossing molten rock and ash in every direction. Alien predators flanked from every angle, some using the heat and terrain to camouflage themselves. The colonists' panic was palpable. Talon and his Deathworlders orchestrated a counter-offensive. Channels of molten lava were redirected using improvised barriers. Alien predators were funneled into explosive kill zones, and heavy-duty equipment was sacrificed to secure temporary safety corridors. Every movement was a lesson in ruthless efficiency, and Rhea absorbed it. Reluctantly, the first major moral climax arrived when Talon forced the colony to abandon a valuable communications array to save trapped civilians. Rhea hesitated, arguing the array could call for future help. But the Deathworlders' logic was absolute. Lives outweigh technology. I am a leader, Rhea thought, voice tight with frustration and fear. But survival requires compromise I never imagined. Tension escalated as lava rivers shifted, isolating sections of the colony. Arcs of molten rock cut off retreat paths. Aliens exploited the chaos, ambushing survivors with terrifying precision. The Deathworlders adapted, luring predators into natural traps, using volcanic vents as weapons, and employing calculated sacrifices to save the majority. Rhea had to reconcile her humanity with the pragmatism of these crucible-born humans. She directed colonists to follow, trusting Talon's guidance. Each step was a blend of strategy and moral negotiation, leaving the weak, moving fast, improvising with minimal equipment. A climactic sequence unfolded when an alien predator breached the main evacuation route. Rhea was forced to act decisively. She improvised, collapsing part of a bridge using explosives repurposed from mining equipment. The alien was destroyed, but structural damage cut off part of the evacuation. Children screamed. Adults froze. Talon's voice was steady. Adapt. Survive. Move. Together, Deathworlders and colonists coordinated a desperate crossing over molten fissures, rescuing as many as possible. The slow-motion visual of survivors swinging on reinforced lines, molten rivers glowing beneath, and alien predators striking from the shadows created a cinematic tableau of chaos and hope intertwined. In the aftermath, the colony was battered but alive. The lava flows had reshaped terrain, alien threats were temporarily neutralized, and survivors lay exhausted, burned, and traumatized. Rhea observed Talon silently standing on a ridge, surveying the horizon, his expression unreadable, yet commanding respect. The Crucible doesn't make heroes, she reflected, voice low. It makes survivors, and survivors pay in ways we'll never forget. The distress signal was fractured, drifting across the void like a wounded ghost. Captain Joran Talvik, a veteran of countless skirmishes, leaned over the console of his standard human reinforcement ship. The coordinates led to an abandoned colony on the desolate planet, Kuros 4, a world shrouded in perpetual twilight under a hazy, sickly orange sky. Too quiet, Joran muttered, rubbing his stubbled jaw. No chatter, no life signs. Nothing. It's too perfect. Something's wrong. His team prepared for a routine sweep. Check the colony, ensure nothing remained hostile, and report back. Their ships descended through swirling dust storms, the wind screaming past the hull like a chorus of warnings. The colony lay ahead, half buried in the rust-red sands. Buildings crumbled, life support systems offline. Shadows stretched unnaturally across broken streets. Looks abandoned. But it never is, Joran thought. The first strike was merciless. Alien predators, adapted to Kuros 4's harsh environment, surged from underground tunnels. They moved with unnatural intelligence, anticipating human tactics. Within moments, Joran's team was overwhelmed. Panic rippled through the small reinforcement crew as weapons misfired. Explosives detonated too late, and corridors became traps. Amid the chaos, a new shadow appeared, a squad of death, led by Mira. They stepped into the carnage with a terrifying calm. Their armor bore scars from alien worlds, their movements precise, calculating. They didn't hesitate. They didn't falter. Myra surveyed the battlefield with cold efficiency. She directed her team with minimal words, their actions orchestrated to lethal perfection. Alien predators were funneled into narrow corridors, subjected to traps improvised from rubble, and eliminated with ruthless precision. Joran watched in awe and fear. They aren't just soldiers. They're a different species of human, adapted to survive where we can't. He attempted to coordinate his team, but it quickly became apparent that conventional tactics were obsolete. The Deathworlders' methods were alien, counterintuitive, and brutally effective. Where Joran hesitated, they acted. Where he sought cautious engagement, they embraced cold pragmatism. The first moral dilemma struck when a group of survivors, researchers, and colonists emerged from a crumbled habitat. Myra made a split-second decision. Some survivors would be escorted to safety, others left behind to slow the predators. Joran's stomach twisted at the choice, yet he had no time to argue. The predators struck immediately, and only the Deathworlders' swift action saved those selected. I've never had to make a choice like that, Joran thought, heart racing, and I don't know if I can live with it. As the survivors regrouped, Myra revealed the extent of the colony's compromise. A hidden alien intelligence had infiltrated the settlement's systems, using its own technology against humans. Communications were sabotaged, traps laid in corridors, and even environmental controls manipulated to create deadly conditions. It's worse than we thought, Joran whispered to himself. We're fighting them, and they know us. The Deathworlders adapted instantly. They hacked the compromised systems, turning the alien traps into countermeasures. Corridors became kill zones. Environmental hazards were redirected to alien advantage, and predators were systematically eliminated. Every action was both terrifying and showcasing their mastery of survival under conditions humans could barely comprehend. Joran's team slowly began to follow, absorbing lessons in ruthless improvisation. He had to trust Mira and her team, despite the cost to his pride, morality, and the lives of those under his command. Hesitation could mean death. The first significant twist arrived when Joran discovered that some of the alien infiltration had been designed to exploit human fear. Holographic illusions, environmental distortions, and even subtle auditory manipulations created paranoia among the survivors. One colonist turned on another, mistaking a friend for a predator. Myra's squad handled the situation with clinical precision. Misled colonists were restrained, predators were neutralized, and illusions dismantled. Joran was forced to acknowledge that survival required suppressing emotion, and that sometimes, the human mind itself could be as dangerous as the alien threat. The second moral and emotional climax occurred. During the clearing of the colony's central hub, Joran faced a dire choice: deploy his conventional forces to protect fragile equipment or trust Mira's Deathworlders to prioritize human life over material assets. Hesitation was impossible. The aliens were closing in, corridors collapsing, and the very ground seemed to rebel underfoot. He chose to trust. Myra orchestrated a maneuver of breathtaking efficiency. One Death Welder drew the predators into a trap, using collapsible floors and debris. Another deployed improvised explosives to channel alien movements. Myra herself led a flanking maneuver, taking out a particularly cunning predator. Using a combination of guerrilla tactics and environmental manipulation, Joran witnessed the results in awe and horror. Humans alive, predators eliminated, but equipment destroyed, corridors shattered, and the moral calculus etched onto every surviving face. This is what it takes. Survival isn't polite, he thought. It's ruthless, and it demands sacrifices I'm not sure we were prepared to make. The psychological tension continued as the team discovered an underground alien chamber, bioluminescent flora and fauna, twisted unnaturally. The alien intelligence pulsing like a living network. Myra led a squad inside, neutralizing threats with preternatural precision, while Joran's conventional team struggled to keep up. Inside the chamber, a revelation. The aliens had adapted using human DNA from the colony, making some predators resemble familiar forms in twisted ways. Colonists panicked at the sight of what looked like corrupted versions of their friends. Joran's voice trembled as he tried to reassure them. Myra's approach was simple and terrifying. Neutralize first. Explain later. The climactic battle within the chamber combined physical, environmental, and psychological threats. Lavelle-like chemical pools, alien tendrils, and collapsing ceilings threatened every move. Death Welders leveraged every element: traps, improvised explosives, environmental hazards, and predator behavior manipulation. The choreography was lethal, cinematic, and deeply unsettling. Joran found himself in moments of terrifying clarity. Survival required embracing a morality he had never accepted: pragmatism over sentiment, efficiency over compassion, decisiveness over hesitation. Each alien neutralized was a lesson in the cost of life, and every choice carried weight beyond the immediate. The emotional climax arrived when a surviving child was trapped amidst alien tendrils. Joran hesitated, hand on the trigger, but Myra acted instantly, cutting the threat with surgical precision. She handed the child to Joran, who realized trust in these crucible-born humans was the only path to survival. The final sequences focused on the colony's evacuation. The remaining survivors were led through collapsing tunnels, corridors set to explode to prevent alien pursuit, and hazardous terrain manipulated to their advantage. Slow-motion shots capture molten metal, sparks flying, and bioluminescent predators thrashing, contrasting with the calm, calculated movements of the Death Welders. Joran's inner monologue reflected both relief and horror. We survived, but at what cost? How much of ourselves did we leave behind in this place?